Welcome back to season 4 of the podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Blackwood. As many of you know, I wrote my autobiography as a survivor of human trafficking called Custom Justice. If you didn't know, you do now. Keeping in line with that, this podcast has been dedicated to interviewing people who also wrote about their own experiences as trauma survivors and how they overcame their pasts. As much as we all hate commercials, they are a necessary evil these days. This is what keeps the show on the air. You can also show support by purchasing one of my many books or donating through PayPal or leaving a review on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. That goes a long way to help. You can find the links for the books or donation options in the podcast description. And as always, a portion of the proceeds do go to local organizations that help fight human trafficking. Hey, folks, welcome back to the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Blackwood. I have an incredible person with me today. She's an author and a speaker, and she has done some really tough work. So, Kim, I'm going to let you say your last name because I wasn't smart enough to actually square that away before we jumped into the podcast. But hey, we're all humans, right? So, hi, Kim. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Amanda. It is so great to be here. I love that your name is Blackwood. It's pretty easy to say. My last name is Sorrelle. It's obnoxious. It has way too many letters, 2 R's, 2 E's, 2 L's. I'm literally the only Kim Sorrelle spelled my way in the entire world. So I totally get that you weren't sure how to pronounce it. It's all good.
So it's unique. Unique is good, especially these days.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
You've been through some pretty scary, interesting, amazing stuff. But before we even get into that, let's talk a little bit about who you were growing up. Where are you originally from?
I am from Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the Midwest. Yes. So I'm happy to be the only state that I can hold up my hand and point to where I'm from, because Michigan is shaped like a hand. And so I can point right there. That's where I am.
That's awesome. I have family up in the Upper Peninsula, and it's harder to do that with the mitt. But we did drive all the way down into the thumb to go to a haunted house, an old Victorian many years ago. Gosh, that was fun.
I thought it was. That sounds like fun.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey. What was it that you had to overcome that kind of put you on this life path that you're on now?
Well, it's interesting. We all go through these journeys, right? And then we've got bumps in the road and try to figure out what to do with those bumps. And so the path that I'm on now, this particular bit of mess that I've been through in my life, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And 4 months later, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he passed away 6 weeks after that. And yeah, it was a crazy time, a tough time, unexpected. I was in my 40s and no breast cancer in my family. So that was a big enough shock all by itself. And then my husband started having stomach pains, and it took 4 months to get a diagnosis for him, but it was pancreatic cancer, which is the worst. It's just not one of the cancers you'd ever pick. Not that you'd pick any, but certainly not that one.
Right.
So, yeah. So it just made me question some things, Amanda. It's kind of funny because I'm not sure why, but it made me question the real meaning of love. And maybe it's 100 reasons why, or one reason why, or I don't know, but it just made me question it because it seems to be this mystery, right? Like there's songs written about it and movies, and there's books galore, and people talk about love, and people try to define it in different ways, give different words to it. But there seems to be this mystery surrounding this universal thing called love. So I decided to dedicate a year to figuring out the true meaning of love. And to be honest with you, I have a hard time committing to an entree when I go out for dinner. So to commit a year to something was a big stretch for me, but I did it. And the things that I found out about love just blew my mind. And so now I'm on this path of sharing what I've learned.
Man, that is fantastic. From what I understand, the Greeks have, 7 different words for the word love, and it all depends on the type of love. And I love that they're able to break that down like that.
It is cool that you can break it down, but really what I found is that love in general. So I just believe you're supposed to love everybody. Like that's the best way to live. There's not just the Bible, but there's other books by great, wonderful, leaders that say love everybody. I mean, it's just what you're supposed to do. And if you do, it's just an easier way to live. You don't have to
Right.
like people. You don't
Right.
have to like them. Like and love, two different things, but just love everybody. And so that love certainly might look a little different when it comes to a partner, might look a little different with your kids, but really love is love is love. And there's like this umbrella over all these different, like the 7 words or the things that I found out. And that kind of just blanket love. And that and there's myths around love. There's things that we believe about love that are not love, things we're taught about love that aren't love, and done in the name of love, said in the name of love, as that are absolutely not love. And so it was an interesting journey for sure,
Yeah.
life-changing and world rocking. Yes.
Yeah. I imagine it would be. I mean, especially, how long were you married to your husband when all of this happened?
Almost 29 years.
And then to lose him so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And I had a very dear friend of mine that had pancreatic cancer. He went through the Whipple surgery and he got another 6 years out of it.
Oh, wow.
It blew
Wow.
everybody's mind, and he was an absolute medical miracle. And I didn't meet him until after that Whipple surgery, about a year after
Wow.
it. He
That's
never would have been in
amazing.
my life. Right. And he taught me a lot about pancreatic cancer and about how there is no specific chemical compound that is built to treat pancreatic cancer, which is why it's one of the most difficult ones. Is they have to take this cocktail for all of these other different types of cancers and then just kind of cross their fingers and hope it does something.
Right, right. And it depends on when you catch it, when,
Right.
when it's discovered.
Right.
And like in my husband's case, it was stage 4. It was in his liver. That's
Mm.
actually where they found it first, was his liver, but it was in his liver. It was in his stomach, like underneath whatever, out of, like the lining of his stomach that was in, it was
Wow.
basically, it was everywhere in his body. It was all through his abdomen. It was trying to burst into his colon, and it was just kind of everywhere. And when cancer is spread that far, it's really hard to get back under any control. And like you said, there's no chemo, no treatment that is specifically for pancreatic cancer. And it's interesting, it's because it's one of the more rare cancers, but we all hear about it because there's been some famous people like Steve Jobs or Patrick Swayze, that have had pancreatic cancer. And so then you hear about it. And so you think, oh my gosh, it must be a popular, like cancer should ever be popular, but it must be, prevalent. It must be around, but it's not. And so it hasn't been studied as much. And so that's why there isn't anything for it. A lot of cancer research dollars go into cancers that affect more people, because then they can save more lives, which I totally get. It's just, there's only so many researchers and so many research dollars, unfortunately, when it comes to anything,
Right.
mental health, cancer, you name it. That's the way it is.
And you were already going through your own breast cancer treatments, right, when he got diagnosed?
I was, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Were you guys able to make the most of your last few weeks together?
Well, I'll tell you, we had a great 6 weeks together. It
I
was
love that.
wonderful. Yeah, it was great. We decided, I was already home. I had resigned from my position. I was running a nonprofit, and I knew I couldn't do the work and do what I needed to do. And so I had already resigned from that. And so I was home. And then he wasn't feeling great, and he hadn't been feeling great. And so it was like, well, we're going to just stay home. And so we did. And we watched Cash Cab and played Jim and Rummy, and, it did whatever. We had a really great 6 weeks together.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Yeah. It was interesting watching his transition.
Yeah.
It's, you think of death as being this instant, this last breath, that's it. But there seemed to be a transition with him that toward the end, there were moments. We never had a hospital bed. We never had a commode. We never had any equipment. We had hospice coming in to control his pain. They did a wonderful job of controlling his pain. And so he was comfortable, and we hung out, and slept in the same bed, and thought that we were months away from anything. We sure didn't think it was 6 weeks. We were told a year, maybe more, because he
Oh,
was young and healthy. And he was 6'3" and 175 pounds and very active and ate great. He was great at what he ate. He took supplements and did the whole thing. He did think that donuts were the fifth food group. So that was his one downfall, but otherwise, pretty healthy guy. And so is just so unexpected. Cancer is just random. It's just random. It's like there's a chink in the armor, a chink in the DNA that can make you predisposed to something. And I think that's what happened with my husband. It wasn't. Sometimes we want to blame things. We want to blame something for it, but I think it was just a chink in the armor, like I said.
yeah. It's in our human nature to look for purpose, look for reason, look for blame.
Right. Looking for purpose and looking for blame, two different things, right?
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah. Because what you've done an incredible job of looking for purpose, and you've found purpose and are helping so many people. And I admire that so much in you. I admire people that can take their pain, take the crap that they've been through, and use it for good. Because first of all, not everybody does. And secondly, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength and a lot of vulnerability, a lot of just exposing yourself to help other people. And I admire you so much for that.
Thank you. You do a lot of this yourself too, though. You got to give yourself some credit here. I mean, let's talk a little bit about your work in Haiti. What is it that you're doing there? What have you
Yeah,
discovered?
right. Well, I run a nonprofit organization, Rays of Hope International, and we're a partnering organization. We work with people in their own country that have a passion, a vision, a mission to help people in their own country and just need someone to walk alongside. So, it's hard to have a medical clinic without equipment, and always leading towards self-sustainability. So that's what we do. And in spending as much time as I have in places like Haiti, not just Haiti, but I've spent a ton of time in Haiti. For years, I was there at least part of every month. And so, yeah, you see the good and the bad. There are some people, it's really quite often the small organizations with big heart that get something done, that are doing something worthwhile, creating some enterprise, some jobs, helping people with education, helping people to help themselves, basically. And so those are usually small organizations that are doing that are changing lives one at a time. And then you see a lot of crap. Like there was a man from the US that had an orphanage for boys. And these women that I knew that supported the orphanage, and they found out that he was farming the boys out, trafficking the boys, and abusing the boys himself, and was actually arrested. They went to the embassy in the US and went farther, and he went to the US for a visit, and he was arrested in Miami, getting on a plane to go back to Haiti, because there's a law that you cannot leave the country with the intention of committing a crime. And that's what they got him on. That is what they got him on. And but it made me think, I mean, how many people are leaving the country with intent to commit a crime? A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. Going to the Philippines, going to Haiti, going to wherever. And we just don't do enough to stop it.
Right. Child sex trafficking tourism is a very big thing, and a lot of people don't want to acknowledge that. Unfortunately, it even happens here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have that beautiful law that says you cannot leave the country with the intent to commit a crime, and that is absolutely a crime. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I recently learned that not every country has laws against human trafficking. So I won't say which ones don't, but there are some places in the world where this activity isn't illegal. And that's just so disturbing.
You know, it is disturbing, but I'll tell you right here in our own country, there are some things that are very disturbing.
Oh, yeah.
One is the amount of, obviously, of human trafficking that happens, that it's not being stopped like it should. Like, you know, sometimes I think we focus on completely the wrong things in every area of life. We focus on the wrong things. But like I have a daughter who was raped. And rape in our country, less than 5% of rapes are ever convicted. It's his word against her word. That's what they told us with my daughter, who I have this beautiful, incredible granddaughter who will be a junior in high school this year, who's a result of the rape. And I don't know what we'd do without her. But we were told it's his word against hers. And to me, then it means it's his word.
Right.
And women, we're our own worst enemies. Women jurists are what the defender, they want that, because women, I don't know why we do that, but we don't believe other women.
Right.
Like women on juries tend to go, well, what was she wearing? Well, maybe she really wanted it. Well, why was she there to begin with? Well, no, rape is rape. Rape happens way too often. And we don't do anything about it. Our country does not do anything about it. You know, it's just the truth. And it's so many things that should be so different in a country like the United States of America, for goodness sake, where we have some things in place and then other things we just drop the ball completely on.
Yep. And rape is a big one. And, you know, back to your comment about women judging women so harshly, I was trafficked 3 different times in my life. And most of the time when I hear the phrase 3 different times, didn't you learn anything the first time? That comes from women.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, those women need to do a little bit of reading.
Right.
They need to have a little bit more understanding of the fact that once you are victimized, the chances of being victimized again are greatly increased, and for a lot of reasons. And it's to not know that is sad, that people don't know that and would ask you that question. I'm sorry that you ever get asked that, because
the average number of times that somebody gets trafficked is actually 7. The fact that I was only trafficked 3 times is a bit of a miracle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
wow.
you know, it goes back to the whole rape scenario. If we reframe that same question 3 different times, didn't you learn anything the first time? Would you ever ask that of a rape survivor?
You know, I've heard it asked.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It happens. Doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it right, but right. It's not a question that should ever be asked.
Right.
I mean, or, you know, I don't know. I know someone very close to me who was sexually abused and then sexually abused again and again and again. Right. And if somebody ever asked her that question, I might get out a frying pan and hit them the side of the head or something, like, you know, that's just not a question you would ask anybody. Instead, your mind should immediately go to, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Right. What a horrible thing that is that has happened to you. And, you know, what can I do to help you, rather than what can I do to hurt you by asking you why you let it happen again. Yes.
You know, my favorite Disney movie is actually Tangled. So the fact that you brought up the frying pan just makes my heart melt. Frying pans, who knew? So how did your own trauma impact your life? Did that have anything to do with the journey that you ended up taking to try and help people?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yes, for sure. For sure. I've been working in the nonprofit world for a lot of years, and totally believe that there's helping, and there's helping that hurts. And, you know, there's people, I just yesterday was asked the question, because I do work in the US, but I also do work in places like Burkina Faso in West Africa, the 3rd poorest country in the world, and Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, and Dominican Republic, that there's a lot of poverty there. And poverty does not, by the way, mean laziness or stupidity. Poverty is lack of opportunity. And we've done our share. The world's done their share of hurting other countries to make money. You know, people hurt people. And so there's a way to help, and then there's a way that you shouldn't help, you know, whatever. But anyway, but just yesterday I was asked, well, there's so much need right in our own backyard. You know, there's so much need right here at home. Why do you go to other countries? Why aren't you just helping here? And I get asked that question sometimes. And it always, this is what always happens. I get asked that and I say, well, I do work at home as well. But to me, people are people all over the world, right? I mean, we are all people. So I was lucky enough, fortunate enough to be born in the United States. Not everybody's fortunate enough to be born into a country with the safety nets that we have, with the school systems that we have, with the opportunities that we have. Not everybody is that fortunate. But then the second question I always ask people, or the thing that I always say is, well, so what are you doing? You know, that's great. Yeah, help at home. So what are you doing? And 100% of the time, anybody who's ever asked me that question is doing nothing to help people in their own neighborhood. And so it's like, well, if we all did something, you know, if everybody did something to help somebody, you know, help somebody with their groceries. I mean, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Help your neighbor who is having a hard time. Maybe they're feeling not so well and they need their lawn mowed. I mean, help can be look a whole different ways, a bunch of different ways, be a bunch of different things, but look for the opportunities and help someone.
You know, it's so funny. We've lost so much of that sense of community since the internet and smartphones, especially, came out. We're too busy paying attention to the people who are on the other side of a tweet than we are paying attention to the people that are on the other side of the street.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's funny. One of the things that I learned about love. So I took this 2,000-year-old poem because I needed to figure out how I was going to go about learning about love. So I took this 2,000-year-old poem you hear at a lot of weddings: love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, does not boast, etc. And took one word a month to figure out what it was. And if I would have stopped at month number 1, my life would have changed. I mean, that would have been enough to change my life. But there are actually 14 is's and isn't of love in that chapter. So it took me a little longer than a year. But even just the first one, so you can imagine, add 13 on top of that. But love is patient is what it is. And I went into the month thinking, this is a breeze. I know what patience is. You know what patience is, right? You're not honking your horn if you're stuck in traffic. You're not mad because your 6-year-old can't find their shoes and it's time to leave for school, right? You're keeping your cool. But love that is patient is entirely different than that. Love that is patient, you know, going back to loving everybody, love that is patient. You love the person you're with. You love them in such a way that you recognize that this is the most important moment of your life. What's in the past is in the past, and what's in the future is yet to come. This here right now is the most important moment of your life. So then you should be fully present and fully engaged with whoever it is you're with. That's showing love. That is love. And I stunk at this. I was horrible at this. I thought that I could be fully engaged and think about who needed to go to soccer practice, what I was going to make for dinner, a meeting I had later, you know, whatever, at the same time, think about my to-do list, and not really hear the person in front of me and make assumptions about what they're saying based on what I know about them or some label I put on them. Love has no labels. You know, people are people. And so when I practiced and practiced and practiced this and learned that, it changed everything for me, because then I actually heard the words being said instead of what I thought was being said. And it is entirely different if you think about it. It is entirely different when you're with somebody and you know that they're hearing you. We all need to be heard. We all need that. We desire that. We need to be heard. And so to show people love that way, show that love, to be there, you know, to not just be hurried off. And certainly there's times when it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be late for this meeting. I can't stop in the grocery store and say hello. But then you can say, Sandra, I'm so sorry. I really want to talk to you. Can I call you later? you can still engage, you can still show that love. But if you can stop for a minute and just show love with love that is patient, it changes everything.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like this was probably a really great healing resource for you, is going through this process. What inspired you to want to do this?
Well, I just wanted to know that I was living life right. When I was diagnosed with cancer, people would say, "Oh, Kim, why you? You help people, you do this, you do that." And my response always was, "Well, why not me? Why would I be immune?" I don't think that there's, God in heaven that just smites people, that says, "I saw you steal that pack of gum when you were in 7th grade. And so when you are 47 years old, you're getting breast cancer." I don't think it happens that way, right? And so nobody's immune. Nobody's immune to it. It's just the way it is. We have disease in our world. And then, with my husband, it was kind of the same thing. And then losing him and working through it, we have choices in life. There are some things we have no control over. We don't make a choice. I'd never choose cancer. I would never choose it for anybody else, right? But that's a choice you don't have always. You don't always have control over that. But you do get to choose how you're going to live. You get to choose the amount of joy you want to have in your life. You get to choose if you want to be with people, if you want to have relationship, if you want to give to the world, if you want to contribute to society, if you want to make the world a better place. You get to pick all those things. You get to pick that. And so, as I watched people deal with a death of a loved one over the years, there are some people that just seem to not be able to get on top of grief and just kind of stay underneath it and feel bad if they laugh again or they live again, like it's somehow dishonoring the person they lost. And I think the opposite is true. I think it's the most honoring thing you can do, is to live fully and joyfully and to honor that person. And so that was my attitude when my husband died, is that I wanted to honor him by living the best way that I could. And so I knew I needed to understand love so I could live it.
Wow. Oh, it's beautiful. Now, I understand that you have your book handy. Would you like to share some of your book with us?
I would be happy to. I'd be happy to. Love is Kind is month number 2. And so in my book, I start out each chapter with what I think I'm going to discover about love, and then what I think it means, whatever it is. And then I end the chapter with how I get hit over the head with the truth about whatever it is and how I find it. So Love is Kind is this one. And I was to the end of the month and pretty discouraged and thought I was never going to find it. But the next day I met Christopher. Christopher was just 3 weeks old. I found him amidst a sea of institutional cribs in the lower level of the Sisters of Charity Home for Sick Children, an incredible sanctuary in the center of a neighborhood devastated by decades of poverty and the ravages of the earthquake. His pink terry cloth sleeper hid the tape securing an IV inserted by one of the compassionate members of Mother Teresa's order. Miniature fingers with miniature fingernails poked out of the sleeves. His delicate features in exact proportion were the kind modeled in paintings by the masters. His eyelashes were as long as if they'd been purchased. Petite brows crowned his face. His skin, the color of caramel cooked just a little too long, had the feel of expensive silk. Jet black hair covered his scalp, but was no longer than the nearly translucent peach fuzz on his cheeks. A clear plastic tube separated the brownish pink heart that was his mouth from the glossy dark chocolate eyes. 2 nearly invisible prongs placed gently in his tiny nostrils were allowing oxygen to feed his lungs. He looked so relaxed, sprawled out on his back, almost melting into the mattress. He was so peaceful, beautiful, and perfect. I reached down to hold his hand, and I noticed a woman standing at the end of the crib. She was something less than 5 feet tall with a very slight frame. Her coarse hair was pulled back into a short ponytail. Sadness hovered over her, making the yellow, happy faces on her short sleeve. Sorry, it's pretty emotional for me. On her short sleeve, common dress look out of place. She had Christopher's dark eyes, or he had hers. Her face was a dichotomy, somehow both worn and weathered from what I imagined to be working for years in the hot Haiti sun, and soft and lovely like a girl, innocent schoolgirl who doesn't yet know how pretty she is. As the morning went by, Natalie and Christopher's story unfolded. Christopher's first breath was on the dirt floor of Natalie's one-room home. His mother, Natalie's only child, died shortly after giving birth. Natalie thought Christopher's inability to keep milk in his stomach was because it was not his mother's. She hoped his body would adapt quickly. As days went by, Christopher became less and less interested in the bottle and more intent on sleeping. Natalie held Christopher close on the several-mile walk to the sisters. By the time Christopher arrived, he was not only lethargic, but his breathing was labored. The sisters found Christopher a donated sleeper, likely worn by a treasured baby girl born in a clean hospital with the best medical care available somewhere in the United States. An empty crib with a clean sheet welcomed Christopher. A clean place on the floor welcomed his grandmother. Dehydration called for the IV, and shallow breathing prompted the oxygen. With no more sophisticated equipment than a stethoscope, the best guess was Christopher had an abdominal obstruction. At first, Natalie was afraid to touch her grandson when there were all these intimidating tubes and needles everywhere. After I held Christopher's hand for a bit, she reached down and did the same. As the number of passing minutes grew, so did our bond, the bond that comes naturally, woman to woman, mom to mom, grandma to grandma. We held each other, never letting go of her grandson's tiny hands. I have felt Natalie's pain. I have gone into the emergency room to see my 4-year-old daughter trapped in a spider web of tubes, each doing something different to stop her seizure. My tears added to those of my son and daughter-in-law while they were cuddling their son for the 2.5 hours of his life. I crawled into the oxygen tent that was helping my 5-month-old son survive a potentially terminal virus. 8 months pregnant, I slept in a chair in an intensive care unit the night the doctors told me that my 4-year-old might never walk or talk again. Like Natalie, I have cried, prayed, and pleaded for God's mercy. Like Natalie, I know anguish, pain, and grief. And like Natalie, my gut ached, my head swam, and my heart broke. Unlike Natalie, I have modern hospital down the street, my doctor's office on speed dial, and a Walgreens within walking distance. Unlike Natalie, I have clean water at the turn of a faucet, plenty of food in my refrigerator, and carpeting on my floor. Unlike Natalie, I was never without family in the hospital, friends able to help, or funds to pay the costs. And unlike Natalie, I did not watch my only child die. At one point during the day, Christopher stopped breathing, and so did we. In a panic, we somehow discovered a kink in his oxygen tube. As soon as we straightened the tube, we all breathed again. 4 hours in, it was clear Christopher's only hope was surgery at one of the handful of hospitals in a city with 2 million people. In my hometown, experienced paramedics would come with a portable oxygen tank and watch him closely while transporting him in an ambulance. In Natalie's hometown, finding a paramedic or an ambulance is like finding buried treasure on an island. I soon discovered that finding a portable oxygen tank in Natalie's hometown was like finding buried treasure in an ocean. I called everyone I could think of in Port-au-Prince who might know where to find a portable oxygen tank. Most could not even recommend a place to go for one. Some drove to look for one. No one could find one. Without surgery, Christopher would die. Without oxygen, Christopher would die. His poor grandma had to make the call. The closest hospital was put on notice that Christopher would be there soon. A driver pulled up to the nearest exit. keeping the engine running. When the van was in place, one of the sisters grabbed Christopher's IV bag while another scooped him up in her arms, pulling the oxygen away from his face. In a blur of white habits, the sisters and Christopher disappeared. I turned back to the crib and saw Natalie. I said, Ale, go, go. My eyes followed Natalie's tears and pointing finger to her bare feet. She knew she'd not be allowed in the hospital without shoes. I quickly kicked off my sandals and gave them to Natalie. I grabbed her by the hand, pulling her out into the street just as the van door was closing. Natalie ran, grabbed the handle, and jumped in. It pains me to say that Natalie lost her precious grandson that day. How I wish the story had a happy ending. It pains me to say that Natalie lost her precious grandson that day. How I wish this story had a happy ending. If Christopher were born where my grandchildren were, he would have had surgery. In a few years, he would be having pirate adventures, playing with trucks, and finding frogs. He'd be celebrating birthdays, learning how to ride a bike, and constructing a fort out of sticks. In a few more years, he would be graduating from high school, then college, maybe followed by med school, where he could then learn how to help other Christophers. Same earth, different world. Kind love became so obvious to me that day. Kind love is giving of yourself without expecting anything in return, not anything, not a thank you, not a reciprocal act, not a nod of acknowledgement. Kind love is giving, helping, sharing when you know that it is impossible to get something in return. I thought about that. I started thinking back about the times when I complained that I didn't even get a thank you, or when I helped someone move, attended their daughter's wedding, brought them food when they were sick, and then wondered where they were at my daughter's wedding, where her gift was, or where my casserole was. First, laser focused patient love, and now no expectation kind love. Shouldn't love be easy, natural? I gave Natalie my sandals knowing I would never see her or them again. I showed kind love before I truly understood it. I did not consider my own bare feet for even a millisecond. I would go shoeless for the rest of my life if it meant Natalie could hold Christopher. Love is kind, period. Doing kind, living kind, giving kind. Love gives the shirt off your back, a motorcycle ride home, and the sandals off your feet, just because love is kind. Natalie opened her heart and shared her only grandson during what was likely the hardest time of her life. I will never forget her kindness. I will never stop loving Christopher. I had no thought about receiving something back, but Natalie gave me so much more than a pair of shoes.
And that comes from Love Is, a year-long experiment of living out 1 Corinthians. It's beautiful and it's heartbreaking. I'm glad I have my camera off right now. I'm going to make sure that I add links to where people can purchase both this one and Cry Until You Laugh. Both of these books are available on Amazon. The links will be down in the description of the of the podcast, as well as links to your website, your Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube channels. And I'm going to end this episode by asking you one last question and letting you finish us out. It's my favorite question, always. What is one thing that you truly love about yourself that's not related to your physical appearance?
I truly love. I love that I understand love and that I give love. That I love that I realize and recognize that people are people all over the world, and no one greater than another. You know, money, looks, fame, none of it defines who we are as individuals. And I'm so happy to recognize that and love people where they are for who they are, no matter what.
If you've enjoyed tonight's episode, please make sure you check out the episode description. There you'll find links on how you can learn more about this guest, links to connect with them on social media, and how to support the podcast. Remember, I don't get paid to do this. My boss is a bit tight-fisted. I can say that. I work for myself. In short, this show really is all about the guest. If you've enjoyed their interview, please feel free to let them know. You can also tune in to my other podcast, Growth from Darkness, which is co hosted by a lovely lady from Australia. We talk about what trauma responses are and healthy ways to move beyond the past. For more information, just go to growthfromdarkness.com. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/growth from darkness.